Mom sent a message. We changed all the locks on the front door and gate code. We no longer trust you. I replied, got it. Smart move. But I think you missed one thing. Then I canceled the $5,600 mortgage I was still paying. Even after they claimed my sister deserved the house. 2 days later their lawyer emailed, we have an issue. Call immediately. I never did. I canceled the $5,600 mortgage payment with one click, then sat back and waited. 2 days earlier they'd locked me out of the house I was still paying for. No warning. No conversation. Just a message. We changed all the locks and gate code. We no longer trust you. I didn't reply with anger. I replied with action. And now the silence was costing them. I was folding laundry when the message came through. I didn't rush to read it. I saw the preview and already knew what it was. My mother had a way of delivering cruelty with precision. We changed all the locks and gate code. We no longer trust you. That was the full message. No punctuation. No emotion. Just a verdict. I stared at it for a moment, then placed the phone face down on the dryer. I didn't need to read it again. That house wasn't just a building. It was the place I learned to ride a bike, the place I cried after my first heartbreak, the place I patched walls and paid bills while they pretended not to notice. I'd been quietly covering the mortgage, $5,600 a month, for years. Even after they said my sister deserved the house. She never paid a cent. But she got the bedroom with the balcony, the praise, the parties. I got the invoices. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't ask why. I simply replied, got it. Smart move. But I think you missed one thing. Then I logged into my bank account and canceled the payment. I didn't hesitate. I didn't feel guilty. I felt clear. For the first time I chose myself over their expectations. The next morning I made coffee and sat by the window. No calls. No texts. Just silence. I imagined my sister walking around the house, proud of her ownership, while the bills quietly stacked up. I imagined my mother pacing, wondering why the bank hadn't processed the payment. I didn't feel angry. I felt calm. Detached. Like I'd finally stepped out of a role I never auditioned for. I spent the day cleaning my apartment. Not out of stress but out of clarity. I dusted the shelves, rearranged the books, watered the plants. I made lunch for myself, something I hadn't done in weeks. I played music. I felt the space breathe with me. On the second day I went for a walk. The air was crisp, the sky clear. I passed a bakery and bought a small cake just because. I sat on a bench and watched people pass by, laughing, talking, living. I didn't think about the house. I didn't think about the locks. I thought about how quiet peace could be. That evening I opened my laptop to check emails. One stood out immediately. Subject line, urgent, property issue. It was from their lawyer. We have an issue. Call immediately. I didn't. I closed the laptop and made tea. Chamomile. My favorite. I sat by the window, sipping slowly, watching the streetlights flicker on. I imagined them scrambling, calling the bank, checking the deed, realizing the mortgage was still in my name. I imagined the panic, the confusion, the realization that the house wasn't just theirs to claim. And I didn't feel sorry. I felt free. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to earn their trust. The birthdays I'd planned, the emergencies I'd handled, the sacrifices I'd made. I thought about the time I gave up a job offer to stay close just in case they needed help. I thought about the holidays I spent alone because they forgot to invite me. And now they'd locked me out. I didn't need a key. I didn't need a gate code. I had something better. Distance. That night I lit a candle and wrote in my journal. I didn't write about them. I wrote about me. About the things I wanted. The places I wanted to visit. The books I wanted to read. The life I wanted to build, without guilt, without obligation. I slept better than I had in months. The next morning I woke up to another message. This time from my sister. Can you call Mom? She's upset. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I'd said everything I needed to say with one canceled payment. I made breakfast, opened the windows and let the sunlight in. I wasn't locked out. I was finally free. I was rinsing dishes when the knock came. Not a polite tap, 3 sharp, impatient thuds. I dried my hands slowly, already knowing who it was. I opened the door to find my sister standing there, clutching a folder like it was a shield. Her face was flushed, her lips pressed tight. Mom said you stopped paying. she snapped, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I didn't react. I walked to the kitchen, poured 2 cups of coffee and placed one in front of her. She didn't thank me. She didn't ask how I was. She just opened the folder and started talking. They signed the house over to me. It's mine now. But the bank says the mortgage is still active. What's going on? I sat across from her, calm. Did you ever pay a single bill? She blinked. What? I reached into my drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. Receipts. Statements. Tax records. I laid them out one by one. 5 years of payments. Repairs. Difference. Property taxes. All in my name. Her face shifted, not to guilt but to confusion. But Mom said. I cut her off. Mom says a lot of things. She stared at the papers, silent. I could see the wheels turning. Not remorse. Not understanding. Just panic. The kind that comes when a plan starts to crack. I didn't know, she said finally. I leaned back. You didn't ask. She gathered the papers, her hands trembling slightly. So what happens now? I shrugged. That's not my problem anymore. She left without finishing her coffee. 3 days later, I got a voicemail from the bank. We're trying to reach the primary mortgage holder. There's been a disruption in payments. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. They'd figure it out soon enough. That same afternoon, another email came from their lawyer. Urgent. Property issue. I didn't open it. I didn't respond. I let the silence speak for me. Then came the calls. My mother tried from a different number. Then another. I watched them ring out. I wasn't avoiding them. I was done. Done being the fixer. Done being the fallback. Done being the one who cleaned up their messes while they smiled for pictures. I spent the evening journaling. Not about them, about me. I wrote down every moment I'd been overlooked. Every time I'd been asked to sacrifice. Every time I'd been told to be the bigger person. I filled pages. And with each word I felt lighter. I remembered the time my sister borrowed money for her car and never paid it back. The time my mother asked me to cancel a vacation to help with renovations. The time I missed a job interview because they needed someone to wait for the plumber. I'd said yes every time. And they'd forgotten every time. I wasn't angry. I was awake. The next morning I walked to the park and sat on a bench near the fountain. A little boy was feeding ducks with his grandmother. She laughed softly, handing him crumbs. I watched them for a while, wondering what it felt like to be nurtured without conditions. My phone buzzed again. A message from my sister. You could have warned us. I stared at it. Then I deleted it. I didn't owe them warnings. I didn't owe them explanations. I owed myself peace. I turned off my phone and walked home slowly, letting the breeze carry away the last bits of guilt. That night I made dinner. Roasted vegetables, garlic bread, a glass of wine. I lit a candle and played music. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. I didn't think about the house. I didn't think about the bills. I thought about how good it felt to choose myself. Later I sat by the window and watched the city lights flicker. I thought about how many times I'd tried to be understood. How many times I'd explained myself, justified my choices, softened my truth. And for what? A locked door. A changed code. A message that said, we no longer trust you. I didn't need their trust. I needed my own. I opened my journal again and wrote one final line. I am not responsible for their comfort. Then I closed it and went to bed. I slept without dreams. I closed my journal and set it on the windowsill, the last line still echoing in my head. I am not responsible for their comfort. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask for music or distraction. I stood up, stretched, and walked to the kitchen to pour myself a glass of water. That's when I saw it, an envelope tucked halfway under my door. No return address. Just my name, written in my mother's handwriting. I stared at it for a moment, then picked it up and walked back to the table. I didn't rush to open it. I knew what it was. I peeled the flap slowly, unfolded the paper and read. Let's move past this. Family is family. That was the first line. The rest was more of the same. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a request to forget. To pretend. To return. I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer beside my journal. I didn't respond. That night, I sat on my balcony with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The sky was streaked with orange and lavender, the kind of sunset that makes you pause. I thought about everything I'd given. Not just money, though that was part of it. Time, energy, emotional labor. I remembered driving my mother to appointments, fixing the plumbing when it burst midwinter, covering missed payments without being asked. I remembered the way they'd smile afterward as if it was expected, as if I owed it to them. And then they changed the locks. I didn't feel bitter. I felt tired. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes, the kind that settles in your bones when you've carried too much for too long. My new apartment was small, but it was mine. The walls were painted a soft cream, and the floors creaked in places that made it feel lived in. I decorated it with thrift store finds, a vintage lamp, a mismatched set of chairs, a mirror with a crack in the corner. I hung old photos on the wall, ones they never asked about. I cooked meals for myself, simple ones, and plated them like I was hosting a dinner party. I planted herbs on the windowsill, basil, mint, rosemary. They grew fast, like they knew they were wanted. I laughed more. I slept better. I felt like I'd come home to myself. One afternoon I was sweeping the hallway when I heard a knock. I opened the door to find my neighbor, an older woman with silver hair and kind eyes, holding a plate of cookies. "Just moved in?" she asked. I nodded. "A few weeks ago." She smiled. "Well, welcome. I'm Ruth. I live across the hall." We talked for an hour. About books, about the neighborhood, about the best place to buy fresh bread. She didn't ask about my family. He didn't need to. She saw me. That simple kindness reminded me that not all connections are conditional. The next morning I woke up early and made tea. I sat by the window watching the city wake up. Cars passed slowly, people walked their dogs, the bakery down the street opened its doors. I felt steady, rooted, like I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. A week later I found myself driving past the old neighborhood. Not intentionally. I'd taken a wrong turn and ended up near the house. I slowed down, then parked across the street. I hadn't seen it since the locks were changed. The gate code had been updated. The locks were new. The porch had a fresh coat of paint. I stood outside looking at the windows. I didn't feel the urge to go in. I didn't feel the need to knock. I just stood there, letting the memories pass through me like wind. I whispered, "Goodbye." I didn't cry. I didn't linger. I turned around and walked back to my car. On the drive home I didn't think about what they were doing. I didn't wonder if they'd noticed the bills piling up. I didn't imagine them reading my silence like a message. Thought about my herbs. About Ruth. About the book I'd started reading. About the dinner I'd make that night. I parked, walked up the stairs, and unlocked my door. The apartment smelled like lavender and lemon. I kicked off my shoes, turned on the radio, and started chopping vegetables. I didn't need their house. I didn't need their approval. I had my own space, my own rhythm, my own peace. And I never looked back.